morning, Moneymakers! How is everybody doing today? We are about to start the very last workshop style session of this wonderful program. So congratulations to all of you that have stuck here till the end. We have a great session and a great speaker coming over to share his knowledge with you guys. So I'm gonna get started here, sharing my screen and get this party started. All right. So today we're talking about plans and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't change this slide. This is not the right topic. We're gonna be talking about plans and pitches today, putting your best foot forward. Remember that all the main sessions are gonna be recorded, that in order to graduate, you need to submit the takeaways forms. If you missed more than 2 sessions, live sessions, then you just need to submit 8 forms instead of 6. If you have been here on all of the 8 sessions, then submit 6 forms. This is what we're going to take into account for your certificates. And Anna and I will go over this throughout the weekend. And then I've shared with you guys the progress that you have. Do keep in mind that that is until week 6. So some of you might see that you have attended more sessions. If it's just a couple, that is the reason why. But if you have noticed any issues, please email me so we can address them, especially if you want your name to be read on graduation, okay? And I know that some of you have been catching up and sending me emails. It doesn't bother me that you guys are sending me emails. It doesn't matter that you send me 10 emails in one day. We want you guys to get the best out of this program. And the takeaways forms is just a way for you to think about it and digest the information that you are receiving. So today's agenda, very similar to the other ones. We're gonna talk with our sponsor, Mike Webb, and then we're gonna have our main presentation with Raj, then the breakout session and the Q&A. You're always welcome to ask questions on the chat. I will copy them, and then we will ask all of them. But just keep in mind that you can ask those questions over there, and we'll go through them. This accelerator is funded by the EDA and the cities, counties, agencies, and foundations that support our work. And with that, I would like to welcome Mike.
Thanks, Annie. Nice to be here again. One thing we wanted to talk about today, or at least I did, is what makes a business plan complete, or what does a bank want to see in a business plan? And typically banks are dealing with businesses that have some seasoning. So part of the process would be gathering financial information. So any historic information you might have is important, but we also like to see where you think you're going to be. So 2 to 3 years of projections is very nice to see. And within those projections, have some kind of cash budget. How much money do you think it's going to take to get you from where you are now to where you want to be? We want to identify that there's enough cash to do that. But one thing we really like to see in a business plan is what makes you unique? What makes you think that you have a product or a process that's going to be something that's going to generate enough cash that will help us get paid back? Essentially, a bank is lending your money out, or the depositor's money's out, and we want to assure that we're going to get paid back. So the better that you can solidify the image of what you have, or the plan of what you have, to us to show that it's something that will pay back, is going to help us decide positively towards making a loan. Very similar to what you're going to have as far as how do you make a pitch to an investor and how will the investor get paid back. But a bank likes to do it a little bit more structurally, let's say. So that's about it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. If you guys have any questions about being able to work with a bank such as Oregon Pacific Bank, please let us know. These guys are amazing. They're very communicative, and I think they have done a really great job sharing all of these tips with you guys. I do want to recognize that thanks to their sponsorship, your guys' prices for graduation are unlike any others that we have had. And I will go through them here in a little bit, but do know that this doesn't necessarily say that every single accelerator that we run is going to have these prices for the pitch competition, but they are amazing and we really appreciate this partnership, Mike. So please let your team know how thankful we are and how much we've enjoyed this this partnership. All right, so now let's continue over here. So you guys notice that, well, my first slide was not the correct one, but here we do have highlighted the right session, and that is plans and pitches, putting your best foot forward. Remember that the mentor hour is tomorrow at 9 in the morning, and you will get your email 15 minutes before, but here is also the link for you guys to connect. Let me see the time. I have a video that I would like to share with you guys, but I think I'm going to share it over email. It's just a video that has a great message from Devon, our keynote speaker. So I will just send that on email in the interest of time. Here are the prizes. We're going to have a people's choice. We're going to have 6 finalists, the best ask, the best business idea, and the best overall pitch. So if you were on the fence about submitting your pitch video, I think this is, a bit of a motivation for you guys to submit them. It's not required, okay? This doesn't necessarily say if you're ready or not. You don't feel comfortable with it, that's okay. But do know that Robert, Anna, and I, just the team is the one that looks at these videos, and then we rate them and choose the ones that we consider are the top ones. And then we share those videos throughout the graduation. So it doesn't have that pressure of presenting a pitch right in front of everybody. And I think that that's a very good one. Adrienne, you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
My question is, how many pitches can we pitch? Because we have different business streams, right, or different income lines, and so we're looking for different funding for different pieces of the business.
We hadn't thought about that. Robert, what do you think?
So I don't think it would be at all a problem to submit more than one. We would limit prizes to 1 per participant. So, but I think if you want to stretch your legs and create multiple pitches, I think that's excellent work. So feel free.
Thank you.
Up to 3 though. Don't send me 10. All right. Well, thank you for that. This is the graduation agenda. It's a little bit different than our classes. We have a welcome message. Then we are going to be bringing Juan Barraza, our incoming board president. Then we'll show the pitches and have the audience vote. Our keynote speaker, Devon, does his speech. Then we have an open Q&A. And then we present the prizes and talk about what's next. Does anybody have any questions about the pitch competition? If you do, write them on the chat and I will make sure to answer those.
What's the deadline for the pitches?
What is that?
The deadline?
The deadline that we set is on this Friday at midnight. I am willing to extend it. I wonder if Robert is willing to extend it too. Put you on the spot.
I wouldn't be able to get to them until at least Sunday. So let's say the end of the weekend, and I can do them all on Monday. That
would help me. That would help me immensely.
So we have extended the deadline for Sunday at midnight, and I will let you guys know about that on an email too, in case that you missed that part. So now to the start of this session, I want to present you to Raj Vable. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Oh, okay, I did. Excellent. Raj is the founder of Young Mountain Tea. And it is a project that it doesn't only take into account the profitability of selling tea, it very deeply rooted in the community that grows the tea and in making sure that they are well supported, that they are well paid. And it's just a passion that Raj has because his family comes from India, and he's always been tied to that culture, and tea is very important in that culture. So he actually goes out, meets the farmers, and they curate all of these teas to bring them to your table. He opened a warehouse in Springfield, and they have been expanding in the last few years. He actually was part of the RAIN team. He was a venture catalyst, and he moved on to continue growing his business, and we are very glad to have him here today. He has pitched a lot for his business, so he has really good tips that I think you guys are gonna like. So if you already submitted your pitch and you realize something, have an aha moment after Raj's presentation, you're welcome to resend it. So with that, the floor is all yours, Raj. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ani, and hello, everybody. It's really wonderful to join you. See a handful of folks that I recognize, but it's really exciting to see so many new people. And because I'm catching up with all of you, I would love if we can start just by in the chat, dropping what it is that your business does in a sentence, not necessarily your business name, but what you actually sell or how you make money. So I'll give you a second to do that, and then we can dive in. Hotel rooms. And to confirm what's going on in the chat, the pitch is capped at 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds. Dance studio, houseplants, pediatric eyeglasses, Airbnb nights. Wow, what a range. This is incredible. Memberships, newspapers, family history, sourdough bread. Excellent. Hey, Sarah, good to see you. Lodging, massage. Wow. Okay. This is quite a diverse set of businesses. I hope what I'm able to present today is useful in some capacity to all of you, and including for the pitch competition that's coming up. It's really exciting. There are cash prizes. Oh, I'm sorry. There's still more coming. We'll let them come. Keep on coming. And yeah, what I'm here to do is today to share some advice that I've gained through experience on what it takes to pitch. And when we say pitching, we're not just talking about fundraising from equity investors. We're also talking about how to approach lenders, how to approach the banks like Oregon Pacific, or even how to pitch your business in making a sale to your customers. And really the core concepts are going to be the same across all of them. So I hope it'll be useful. And to kind of make this interesting and fun, I do have a challenge to begin us with. So I'm going to share my screen. And I hope you're all feeling creative this morning because we'll need it. Let me get this up. All right, can I get a thumbs up? You're seeing my screen?
Got it.
Yes, got it. Okay, great. I need a brave volunteer to come off mute and in 30 seconds, use this picture to tell a story that connects us to your business. Doesn't have to be accurate. You can make it all up, but we need somebody to lead us in.
Hello.
Okay, Mitra,
Okay.
yes.
Your scalp is very dry and your hair is suffering. And I have this wonderful shampoo and massage that will make your hair more luscious and beautiful.
Beautifully done. I don't know if that connects directly to this picture, but it was a convincing one. And I was like, oh, shoot, is my scalp dry when you're saying that? I'll hope not. But great, that was really good. And Adrian, do you want to give it a try at connecting this picture to your business?
I'll go ahead, Raj.
Oh, sorry, we got
Just-
Adrian.
oh.
Thanks. 1 second. Let's have Adrian go.
Just when you thought play could not get any more immersive, we have developed an outdoor playful experience that will blow your socks off and keep your heart pumping.
Hey, very nice and concise as well. That was really good. Okay, let's it looks like we've got time for 2 more.
I got it. Wait.
Mitra, did you already go? Is your hand still up from before?
I did not go yet, no.
Okay, Mitra, take us.
Okay. Deforestation and the urban canopy is one issue that relates to climate change, but so do the clothes that you wear. Discard upcycling offers a solution to fast fashion by providing affordable and sustainable clothing.
Excellent. Wow, I'm really impressed at how well everybody's able to pivot in the middle of the sentence. Thanks, Mitra. And just for this time, we'll have one more, and then we can come back if we have time at the end. But Sandy, I think you're next on the list.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Raj. What you see here is a beautiful picture because you have the right eyeglasses to be able to see those. There are 239 million children and 40 million children in India who cannot see as clear as this. I have a solution that's under $5 so that every child in India can see this picture clearly.
Very well done. Thank you very much. And Elizabeth, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Equo. Thank you for raising your hands. We'll come back to time if we have it. But the point is that what we've heard is a collection of people off the cuff trying to do what is at the heart of any good pitch, which is to tell a story. And so if you take anything from today, I would hope it's this line, that pitching is the same thing as storytelling. And you have to become storytellers. It's often uncomfortable initially to kind of claim that role. But if you hold at the heart of what you're trying to do with your pitch to entertain and inspire the audience that you're speaking with, by building an inclusive narrative that brings in whoever you're talking to, whether that's a lender, whether that's an investor, whether it's a customer, if they can feel connected to you personally, and they believe in what you're saying, and that they believe that you believe in what you're saying, then they'll want to support it in a way that's different than if you're just pitching them on numbers and facts and figures. And kind of tied to that is if you can create some sense of awe or some sort of emotional resonance between yourself and them, then you've got what it takes to really put together a compelling pitch. And to putting today's deck together, what I did was plug a bunch of friends who are also business owners to ask them what their advice was for pitching. And this comes from my friend Lisa, who's raised a whole bunch of money and sold a whole bunch of her Cooley products. And this is her line. Humans have been using stories to communicate for all of human history. We remember stories, not facts. And to do that, start with the why. And we'll come back to what she means by starting with the why in a second. But again, this is at the heart of it. If you can tell a story with your pitch, you will be doing your pitch justice. And then a common thing that I often like to think about is like, what's the point of what I'm doing? What am I trying to achieve with a pitch? And Sam, who's also a very successful entrepreneur himself, he says, when you're getting ready to give your pitch, you should set an intention of getting them, the audience, excited to want to follow up with you, rather than trying to commit to something right there. And sometimes if you're finding yourself like in pitch contests where there's a prize that you're all competing for, maybe later, you might feel this compulsion to, in that moment, trying to convince them to invest in your business now. But this is saying that similar to the same way, a resume, the goal of a resume is to set up an interview. The goal of a pitch is to set up a longer conversation between you and whoever you're talking to. Okay, so that's just the gist. Again, storytelling and setting up conversations are what we're trying to do with our pitches. But the number one rule of pitching or fundraising generally is that when you're raising money, to remember that people ultimately invest in people, not in products or ideas. So when you're pitching, you're presenting yourself and not just your business. So you have to serve the role as both the narrator and the protagonist in your pitch in crafting something that people will resonate with. And what you're trying to do is instill a sense of confidence that if they take a bet on you, that you'll come good on that bet, and that the people that you're speaking with, usually who have money, are going to make money from their taking that leap of faith. You also want to show in giving the pitch that you're coachable, meaning that you're receptive to feedback. You know you have a lot to learn, and that you're welcoming of input. Advisors and mentors are often, a lot of times, investors. They don't want to just put money in. They want to get a little bit more hands-on in the business, and they want to get a sense that if I come in with my support, that support will be welcomed and embraced, not sort of held off. So when pitching, it's not just about bragging about what you've done or what you're going to do. It's also conveying a sense of humility and convincing people that, yeah, I'm ready to grow on this journey and ready to have you support that growth. It's kind of like being trustworthy. You don't say you can trust me. That's how you know I'm trustworthy. You have to convey that, and we'll go over some ways that you can do that in a second. But yeah, I wanted to just harp on this idea that why people invest in people and not products or ideas. This actually very much matches my own experience. The first $15,000 that we secured for Young Mountain, there was no pitch deck involved. There was no numbers involved. It was a conversation that I had with a gentleman in Eugene that led to a second conversation. And he said, I trust that you really believe in what you're doing. And so I'll give you $15,000 to do it. And then the next year he gave us $20,000 again. So to say that, again, what you're doing is presenting yourself as much as what your business is and your product or services. Always hold that, you know, your character is also on the line, and that should permeate every interaction you have with the people that you're talking about, not just the pitch, but the emails that precede the pitch, the conversations that you have after. It's all about making sure that you come across as respectable, professional, and fun and exciting to work with. So that's golden rule number one.
We have a question here related to this. If people invest in people and not ideas and numbers, then how do they prevent themselves from being bamboozled by really slick storytelling?
Well, in the due diligence process, which usually follows up, that is often what they're looking at. So we're not saying that people invest in people without having some kind of product or idea to support it, but rather that when you lead, you're leading with yourself, not these other things. And it's definitely the case that people do get bamboozled by convincing storytelling. And that's, I think, one of the kind of interesting things in watching other businesses do really well in the beginning, that if there isn't enough of an actual business to support whatever story is being told, that will come to the surface over time. So yeah, thanks for that question. I'm not saying don't have a good product and don't have good ideas, but rather recognize the priority should be on the people first. Because, you know, at an early stage of business, whatever you're saying you're going to do, it's really just guesswork. And everybody knows that. So what they're putting their bet on is not that your guesswork is accurate, because whatever you're putting forward, you're probably wrong about. It's probably going to change. You know, 3 years out is a long time away to know how much revenue you're going to be making. But if they have confidence that along that way, along that journey, you will be able to grow and kind of change course as needed, like when things like COVID come around, that's what they're putting their money behind. Thanks for that. Okay, so that's rule number one. And the second one is to know your audience, right? Often when we're pitching, it's uncomfortable for us. We're getting up and talking to a group of strangers, or even if it's a one-on-one conversation with, you know, in my case, it's often buyers from different companies, and you don't know about them. And it's kind of tempting to just like sink into, let me just push forward the message that I have crafted that tells the world about myself and my products. But a big part of pitching is adapting your story and your messaging to your audience. And so ideally, when you're going into whatever arena you're pitching in, you've done your research ahead so that you know how to shift the message to address the needs or the pain points of the people that you're speaking with. And not only will this make your pitch more successful, if you know the audience that you're speaking to, you'll feel like you've got this head start on them, and that you'll be much more comfortable in presenting yourself. And yeah.
Hey, Raj, one quick question. So let's say your audience has a healthcare background and you're pitching them something else. Do you always try to find out some kind of a bridge to connect what you are going to talk about to their possible private, not private, past experiences?
To a degree, yes. And actually, the example you gave very closely mirrors the experience I had with a angel network group out of Texas who invests primarily in biomedical companies. We're a tea company. And so, in the beginning of that, I said, I know that this is not your standard pitch, but I'm here to give you something that's unique and interesting, and maybe will help you think about new opportunities that are outside of your norm. And so I think acknowledging that there is a gap there is appropriate, but you don't want to be apologetic or sort of defensive about that gap. Yeah, and another part is, if these are, like we're saying, these aren't always just pitches for big audiences. This might be just personal conversations you're having. If you have the opportunity to understand what drives the decisions of the person that you're talking with, that is a very helpful thing to be able to craft your message to. So, for example, we're a tea company. We sell organic teas that we believe are really high quality. I was pitching to an institutional purchaser who I learned in the conversation, the reason we were having the meeting was not because of our teas, not because of the mission, but because they had some zero waste goals that we helped to fulfill because our products are totally compostable, and because they were looking at supporting minority-owned businesses. And so it was this interesting moment of like, wow, I have not done my research in this conversation. I didn't know that that's why you wanted to talk to me. And so the more, I wish in that situation I had done more to understand where my audience was coming from, so that I could have more effectively crafted the message. We did eventually get the sale, but it was a hard one. And I think that's everything on this one. One other thing about research is, if this is for some kind of funding support, in addition to sort of doing your online research of the actual organization, if you can find out other organizations that they've supported and then go talk to them to understand what the experience was like working with them, that can also be really valuable information. And a question that I like to ask is try to find out situations where things didn't go well, because those are really those are the situations you want to safeguard against. If things don't go according to plan, how does the person that you're talking to respond? And making sure that you're comfortable with that as well. Okay, so knowing your audience is number 2. We're going to transition now into a little bit more specific things. Typically, when you're pitching a business, there's 4 things that you'll want to have at the ready. One is a pitch deck. These are 10 to 15 slides or less, plus appendixes that tell the story. And we'll go through what should be in those slides in a little bit. You'll also want an executive summary, which is a 1-page document that summarizes what it is that is on offer, how much you're trying to raise, what you'll do with the money, who the team is behind it, and what the business is as a whole. You'll want some kind of financial summary. 2 to 5 year profit and loss statements are typically what we've shared, and that seems to check the boxes. You don't need to have super detailed balance sheets or cash flow statements, although often cash flow, especially with lenders, is an important thing to have. And what you'll want to make sure that those statements are demonstrating is that you have established a pathway to profitability if you're not already there. And then also a short introduction, 3 to 4 sentences that summarizes your business, plus whatever you're looking to raise. And this is actually a tool because, even within the Oregon Rain Network, I've had this experience where people want to make an introduction for you, but they don't know enough about your business to do it justice. So if you've got this little paragraph that they can just copy and paste and send along, that'll help open up doors. So again, the pitch deck, which is usually what people focus on most, but some of these other documents are equally important. The 1-page executive summary, financial summary as well, and then a short introduction. And on the pitch deck, you'll want to have 2 versions. One that has a lot of text that is being used to present the business when you're not there. So for example, if there's an introduction is being made, here's the pitch deck, but you might not actually be able to present that deck, then that usually has more text than the one where when you're actually presenting it. And for that one, you'll want it to be a lot cleaner and less text heavy so that people don't get lost in words and rather are able to focus on you. On the financial summary, I put showing a pathway to profitability as one thing to include, but you just want to have some sort of milestone that's significant to the business that you can talk to. And this is like the storytelling that we're talking about is both like your business and sort of yourself, but then also in parallel is the story of the way the business is going to grow. And so profitability for early stage businesses like all of ours, or well, I shouldn't say all of ours, for most of us is a common one. Other milestones that other people reference are like reaching $1 million in revenue or having enough customers to justify a strong customer base, demonstrating a certain growth percentage over time. And it's worth taking the time with all of these documents to make them look sharp and professional, because these really are, again, in the building of confidence of whoever you're talking to, every interaction and every document they review does help inform that decision. And then kind of connected to that, this is a very practical piece, but when you're sending your pitch deck or executive summary, please send them as PDFs. Don't send them as Word documents or PowerPoints. It just looks sharper and it prevents the possibility of things getting confused down the road. All right. And this is probably the second most important one, which is just to practice the heck out of your pitch and practice it by yourself. And what I've done many times is record myself and watch it and imagine I'm the one making the decision. One of the things that often happens when anybody's presenting is that they talk really fast and then they talk really monotone because they've got this script and they're just burning through it. That's not what you want. So record yourself and watch it back to make sure that it is the version of yourself that you want to communicate. Practice this with your trusted people, advisors, mentors, friends, anybody else on the team. And one thing that I've found to be helpful is I give a pitch and then ask them to pitch back to me what they heard. And that experience is also, you can learn a lot from, the way your message is actually being received. We have an idea of how we think we're coming across, but it's helpful to hear from somebody else. Did they hear what you thought that you said? In safe fail environments, we're familiar with fail safes. This is the reverse. In environments where it's safe to fail. And so if their pitch, for example, is one where you're putting it together to make a sale, the farmer's market for food businesses is a great safe fail environment where you can practice refining that one liner, that one hook until you've got it just right over time. And the idea is that you want warm-up audiences that you're sort of, it's okay if it doesn't work out, so that when you get in front of the big stage, whatever the one conversation is that that this is the one you want to get right, you've practiced it enough that you're comfortable to do it. And then this is something, especially in the accelerator that you're all going through, that it's a unique opportunity is to practice your pitch with other businesses and other entrepreneurs. Because sometimes it's really awkward to present yourself even to people but if you know that other people are in the same position and have to do it as well, a fun activity we call is the pitch switch, where you give your pitch and then the other person gives theirs, and then you switch and pitch the companies back to each other. But the idea being that in all of this, you never want to find yourself in a position where you haven't actually spoken the words for your pitch out loud until the actual performance. And it's, I think, also a common thing. If you're like me, it's not always comfortable to be in these kinds of environments where you're kind of putting yourself out there and hoping you'll be well received. So you just kind of wait and wait and wait till the big moment. And you've got your script, but you haven't actually said it. It's much better to actually stretch yourself out of your comfort zone earlier by practicing with other humans than to wait for the end. All right, so we practiced our pitches. And now let's get into what we're actually talking about when we were referencing a pitch. The anatomy of the pitch is basically three parts. There's the problem or the opportunity that you're working to address. There is the solution that your business has put together that solves this problem, addresses the pain points of your target customers. And then there's the ask, which is, what's the point of this pitch? It's to get something out of the audience. And the more specific and concrete you can make the ask, the more easy it is for the audience to take action. You never want to find yourself in a situation where you gave it a pitch, but it's not clear what people should do in response to that. So we'll go into a little bit more of each of these parts, but because the idea of a pitch is it's not just this pitch deck version, it's also the one-line version. It's also a 30-second version for the classic elevator pitch, right? When you find yourself with the CEO of whoever it is that you're trying to impress, and you've got this opportunity to present. Yeah, all the variations of the pitch that you'll give should have some version of a problem, a solution, and an ask. Make sure I've covered everything. And on the solution, let me just go a little deeper into each one of these. So problem, it's what's the pain that your customers or clients are feeling that they're willing to pay you to address? And this is the important part of being bringing that problem to life through some kind of personal narrative, which we'll go into more in the breakout activity. Another good thing to do is often to include a hook or some way to catch the audience so that they feel connected, whether it's dry scalps or what have you. And yeah, as my friend Lisa said at the beginning, to start with the why. And we'll talk about starting with the why means in a second. On the solution, how are you solving the problem? And what makes your approach unique? In other words, why hasn't somebody already solved this problem before? And when doing this with a deck, we'll find that the solution is actually the kind of the longest part of the pitch, but it's really establishing that unique part that's the challenge. And then on the ask, what do you want your audience to do? Is it to give you money? Is it to make you an introduction? Is it to buy your product? You have to make sure it's very concrete at the end, that it's clear what you're asking of the person you're talking to. And so, as I said, these versions of the pitch is kind of like it'll flex and grow to the size of the conversation you're having. But for the most commonly referred to type of pitch, like a 15-minute pitch with the pitch deck, this is what you're going to, this is kind of a rough template that is, you'll see these kinds of templates all over the internet. But the 12 elements that you will want in a pitch. And this is roughly the order that they often are in, but not exactly always. And yeah, so we're talking about some kind of cover slide, a slide where you're covering the problem or the opportunity, a slide on the solution explicitly, and then a slide on the target market, your target customer, an analysis to show how you are different versus your customers. A go-to-market strategy, which is how are you actually going to take this idea, this product or this service, and then actually make money out of it, whatever traction you might have to date. A high-level summary of the financials, an overview of your team, of course, that ask, and then kind of closing slide, which is an outro with your contact information. And what I wanted to highlight in this is that this took me a little while to get right. Where the focus should be on the pitch is these things in green. These are all related to revenue. And so what you do want to show is that there is actually a sales growth plan that you're pitching. And, you know, about half of the slides, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I'm kind of correctly. Almost half the slides are about the way your sales are going to grow over time and your understanding of your market. So just remember that in working through your pitch and developing it, really having a deep understanding and being able to talk about what you're pitching into, the market that you're going into is important. And one last thing on this is that, you know, we are seeing the problem solution ask format here. There's the 1 on the problem. Basically 3 through 10 are all on the solution. And then we have the ask. So I've got an example of my own pitch, kind of scrubbed clean, that I'll cover if we have time. But this is it. And of course, you'll get these slides so you can grab this template and make it your own.
Raj, I think that it will be helpful to see your slides and all that. We have a lot of questions over here.
Oh,
I want
okay.
to clarify that
Yeah.
for the pitch competition, that you guys are submitting is just 90 seconds. You do not need to have all of this pitch deck itself. You don't need to have all of these slides. You just need to express the problem, the solution, and your ask. This is more in depth, and it is meant to be towards getting investors. Okay, and this is very standard in the industry. I mean, if you Google this, you are going to see this is very uniform. And things variate depending on your audience. So this is why it's important to do your research. You know, if you are going to a venture fund or anything like that, you look what their clients are, and you're probably going to find things over there where you can that you can use as a guide. So right now, what we can do, we have enough time to go through some of the questions we have here on the chat.
Okay.
And we can either do that, or what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do just write either Q&A right now or going through Raj pitch deck?
Oh, sorry, Ani, let me clarify. I do have a handful of other little slides to share. But yeah, but I do want to also underline what Ani was saying, that, you know, the 90-second version that you guys will deliver for this program, it should hopefully have elements of everything that's on this screen. But regardless of the environment that you're putting in, you know, we work with a couple of lenders in Oregon. One was Craft 3 in the Portland area, and another was Community Lending Works. And while they didn't want these kind of formal pitch decks, they did want business plans, which include all of these elements as well. So if you are planning at any point to go get outside funding, you'll want to be familiar with everything that's on here. And I'm happy to maybe offline follow up to clarify what's on here. But yeah, for the 90-second version, it sounds like this is the expectation would not be to have this there.
All right, thank you. So should we?
Okay, yeah. Let me cover a little bit more information, and then yeah, we have.
Perfect. And don't worry, guys, I have all of your questions written down over here, so they're not lost on the chat. All right.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm just really not good at monitoring the chat and talking at the same time.
No, you're good. That's my job.
Yeah, great. Okay. 7 other tips that look like they're actually only 6 here. I think the 7th got chopped off. But some other things to do is when giving your pitch, if you can, have a prototype of your product or service so the audience can actually experience what it is that you do. For us, you know, that's drinking tea. If it's, you know, an online-based experience, you know, walking people through a prototype. But some way, if you can, to make it a little bit more tangible and real than a bunch of just slides or just a conversation is really helpful. Save time for the Q&A. And this is specific to a pitch deck, but, you know, recognize that you'll probably need additional information than what you can put in those first 12 slides, and have that handy to draw from in the end. If you get questions that you're not ready for, know that that's not uncommon. And so just be ready for, you know, you don't know what's going to come your way in the Q&A, but just try to be concise in your response and offer to follow up. Say like, you know, that's a good question. I can tell you that this year our margin's 42%, but in 3 years, I'll have to follow up with you to review the model and tell you where we're going to land, as an example. So just be ready to follow up. And if you say you're going to follow up or do anything in the conversation, be sure to actually do it. And again, this is kind of in the category of the whole process of talking to people is a lot about convincing people of your credibility. And so if you say you're going to do something, then you got to do it. And what we found for equity investments is that the follow-up interactions that you have after a pitch deck, after a pitch rather, often serve as the sort of beginning of the due diligence process. And it's a good way, if they're that excited, if they want to follow up and dig deeper into what it is that you're doing, encourage that and find a way to leverage that towards moving closer to whatever your end goal is. Yeah, this is something that is number 5 is a brutal reality that when you're out there fundraising, it's pretty much full-time focus. And so just for yourself to know going in that while you're doing your fundraising work, you're probably not going to have time for much else, including sales, including production or operations and other things. So just go in with your eyes open that it is a consuming process. And this isn't specific to pitching, and I know you've covered in this program already how much to raise, but this is good advice that I can say from personal experience is accurate. Raise more than you think you need and start earlier than you think you'll need to get it. And the kind of often the shorthand is like raise twice as much as you think and give yourself twice as long as you think it'll take to actually get it. Especially in the holidays, trying to close anything basically now to the end of the year is really challenging, especially with people clocking off towards the end. Okay. I'll have to follow up with you with that 7-tip list. And then when you're presenting, here's some things to make sure that you're not doing, which is including any typos, right? These are professional presentations that you're giving. And so having things wrong, like 7 tips on having 6, that's not something you want to do. And so you want to have somebody proofread everything that's not yourself, get a second set of eyes to look at it. Try to avoid reading. It's pretty normal to write out your pitch as a script, but you don't actually want to be reading it when you're delivering it because that just puts people to sleep. They're not there for a lullaby or a nighttime story. They're there to be excited. You want to avoid lying. And this is actually, I mean, obviously nobody wants to lie, but it's a situation that you might find yourself in trying to sell the dream, trying to sell where you're going. And it's a fine line between doing that and then just making stuff up. So just recognize that somebody gave me this advice. You want to sell your solution to the credible limit of where you're at. And that's the thing I think for all of us as entrepreneurs that we find ourselves like we're trying to do something that hasn't been done before and you're trying to get people on board to do it. And so you often feel like you need to push forward something that's your idea that might not actually be all the way there, but you don't want to go too far. Bragging. I feel like especially in this age of micro influencers, it's tempting to put your accolades a little front and center. But remember that a big part of the pitching process is convincing people that you're coachable and that you don't have all the solutions and you know it. But you do have confidence in your ability to learn and grow as you move forward. And the kind of flip side of bragging is you don't also want to be too humble. You don't want to air your grievances or, highlight your weaknesses, but rather own your strengths and talk about them with confidence. And it's hard to convince somebody that you're competent if they also feel a strong amount of lack of self-confidence. So you don't want to brag, but you don't want to also be too humble either. Rushing, as we said before, it's common when you're actually in the spotlight to just burn through whatever it is that you're trying to say. So make sure to slow down and to recognize the value of silence. Because actually it is an interesting thing. Just a second or two of silence helps drive home your main points in a way that if you're just kind of shotgun styling your way through your script, it often will just get lost in people. So don't rush. Walls of text. My friend Lisa said, she says, never have more than 5 words per slide in the version of your pitch deck that you're going to be doing live. And this is in contrast again to the other version that you might be sending, knowing that you won't have the chance to present it. That one can have more text, but when you're pitching live, don't have too many words on your slides. And then waiting too long to practice with others. I feel like we already covered this a bit, but for many of us, getting in front of people is nerve-wracking. So we want to wait till we have everything just right before we present it. But I would encourage you to not do that. Stretch yourself out of your comfort zone earlier and more regularly when it comes to pitching so that you're already familiar with the places of the pitch where it gets a little tricky to remember what your script is or whatever that is. Okay, so this is my last slide, and then we can do Q&A, and then if we want, we can go through our own script. But in the end, what we're talking about when we're talking about pitching is storytelling. And so you have to become storytellers yourselves and to own your narrative in a way that we'll talk about in a little bit in the breakouts to help create a connection between you and your audience that's not just intellectual, but also emotional. To remember that people invest in people, not just products or ideas. You do have to have a good product or idea, but ultimately it's about establishing your own credibility and your coachability as you move forward. To know your audience by doing research of them, and the degree to which you can, understanding what drives their decisions, what their incentives are, both at the organizational level as well as for the individual. For example, one of the people I was working with early in a pitching process, once I realized that actually he advances in his career by bringing really good deals to his investment committee, made it like, oh, we're on the same page. You want this to work for yourself as well. And so understanding your audience and knowing what drives their decisions is an important part, as well as their needs, especially if it's you're pitching for a sale opportunity, their pain points, in other words. Practice enough that you don't need your script. We already talked about that. And then, yeah, the last part is to enjoy it, to have fun, and to recognize that enthusiasm is actually quite contagious. And so really what you're trying to get is people on board with your idea, and people relate to excitement in a way that I found to be very successful. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen for now. And then, yeah, should we do some Q&A? And then I think it'll take probably about 7 or 8 minutes to get through my pitch deck, maybe even 5. We can go through that if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that will be helpful. What do you guys think? So you can write it on the chat. Let's go through some of your questions, and then at 10 we'll go into the breakout session, and then we'll come back and continue. Yeah, people definitely want to see your pitch deck. All right, so hold on, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to make sure that we're asking the most relevant ones. Can a pitch deck get in the way of telling your story? And if so, like, how can you compensate that?
Yeah, it definitely can if there's too many words on it, too many facts and figures. People just get, this is what I've learned, especially with numbers. If you put a number on a screen, people will latch onto that number endlessly. So you can use that effectively, you know, for a while, like what we learned is that the markup between tea farmers and tea consumers is 80,000%. So for a long time, that was just the first letters, 80,000%. But the idea that if you have a whole wall of numbers, you will lose people. So again, I think the strategy is less is more when it comes to putting together your slides.
Okay, wonderful. What are your thoughts on using a smartphone formatted pitch deck to send to prospects via mobile phone?
Interesting. I feel like I'm maybe old school in this way. I personally would not do that. I would want to feel, for the way my experience is that you want it to be as razor sharp professional as you can. And if you can pull that off in a smartphone context, that'd be good. But I would imagine that you want to do some kind of desktop version. Of course, sending your pitch deck by phone would be all right, but I wouldn't do the whole design work inside of a phone. I would want something that has a little bit more firepower behind it.
Okay, now you mentioned at some point on one of the slides to present 2 to 5 years projections, and some people are a little confused about that.
Yeah.
So can you clarify that aspect? Why 5 or why 2? And
oh, sure. How do you pick the number? It kind of depends on the audience again. Yeah, it's always nicer to have to present less. But for example, if you don't think you're going to hit profitability to year 3, then you don't want to just paint 2 years of loss generation. So I think it depends a little bit on your business as well as the audience. Sometimes they might want projections monthly, sometimes annually. But yeah, asking them what they want is a good way to clarify that. And one thing that we also learned is that doing too much legwork around the projections can become a time sink. So, you know, I would keep it at the summary level, meaning like you've got like from the profit and loss statement, you know, your revenue, your cost of goods, your gross net income, your expenses, and then your net income with some details, but not every single detail is a good way to make sure you're covering the bases, but not going too deep. And the amount of time, yeah, again, catering to what your audience wants. Robert, did you have a question or a thought?
Just a comment on that. Yeah. So from a banker's perspective, a banker will rarely ever ask for more than 2 or 3 years, but that's because the bank presumes that you're in profitability or will be there soon, or you're not going to a bank. They're not interested in a business that's not going to be profitable for 3 years. And it's good to know that bankers recognize that no matter what you put down on your projections, the first 12 months might be accurate-ish. Beyond that, all bets are off. Bankers recognize that. So that putting the projections out there is not so much about being accurate about what you're going to do, but for the person who's looking at it to understand how you're coming to those numbers. Understanding that you're putting thought into it and have a strategy is more important than the accuracy of the numbers in the end.
Thanks, Robert. And yeah, we're lucky. You're all very lucky to have Robert, who actually has direct banking experience to speak from. I'd be curious, Robert, if you'd agree this. Something else that I've noticed is that a little bit is like, do you have the ability to put together numbers, period, and talk about them is what's also being vetted by the projections.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what a lot of a bank will look for a more traditional business plan rather than a pitch deck. And a lot of that is just seeing that you can put it together. That's why utilizing tools that help you with that process, help you get your head around the numbers, like, we've got this relationship with LivePlan, utilizing a system that will help train you as you're putting it together is really valuable. Because if it looks like it makes sense and you can talk them through it, they're going to be much more confident with their decisions.
Cool.
All right, wonderful. We have a situation here about somebody that made a pivot due to COVID. They were focusing first on doing activities that were in person, but then with COVID, they ended up going interactive, online, playing ideas, and that really opened up a lot of opportunities. So is that pivot story something that they should include in their pitches and illustrate, so that they can showcase their commitment to their core business offering and ability to land on their feet no matter the circumstances?
That's a good question. So I'm not an investor, so I can't say what the other side would necessarily want. I would think it would make sense to include it in some capacity, but not to lead with it, rather than say, wow, COVID really sent us for a spin, so we had to come out and now here's what we're doing. Say this is what we're doing, and then at some point, and to demonstrate that we can grow and adapt to changing situations. Let me tell you also about how we started. So I would right size it so it's sort of fit into this is what we've done in the past, but not start with it and not harp on it too much. And Ani, am I correct that you said we'll switch to the breakouts at 1? Oh, sorry.
The
top of the hour.
You're in a different time zone. You're in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go into, yes, 1 your time, 10 our time.
Okay, then I saw a handful of folks asking for the pitch deck. Let me just fly through it. And what I'll do is maybe just spend a bit of time on the problem statement, and that'll kind of set the context, I think, for the breakout activity.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. So let's go through your pitch deck, and then we'll do the breakout activity. And then after we come back, we'll continue with all these questions, which I think are great. I also think that with you showing them their pitch, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be clarified.
Sure. So we'll come back to it. But yeah, okay. Here we go. All right, everybody, thank you for the chance to share our work with you. My name is Raj Vable, and I'm the very proud founder of Young Mountain Tea. And what we do at Young Mountain Tea is create organic teas that come straight from Himalayan farmers. And to tell you why we do that, I want to start with this picture. This is a woman named Jamuna who lives in a village in northern India in the Himalayas. And every day she climbs these trees to strip them one by one to collect the branches to make food for her family. And she doesn't do this because she wants to. She does it because she has no choice if she's to keep her family fed. And I took this picture in 2013 when I was on a Fulbright fellowship in this region. And I was on a ridgeline opposite her with a camera. And I was holding that camera and asking myself, what roll of the dice put me here on this side of the ridge with the camera in my hand, and Gemina in that tree with no option, and except to harvest this wood for her family. And it's my search for answering that question that led to starting Young Mountain Tea, because I learned that not only was Gemina's situation not unique to her, it's also one that's getting worse over time. And so Young Mountain Tea, we're a social enterprise that's trying to solve 3 interrelated problems of urban migration, land degradation, and climate change, all through tea, which helps to create real jobs to reverse urban migration. It's a strong crop to anchor biodiversity, to revitalize wasteland that's occurring increasingly. And because the tea is a tree whose leaves drink carbon dioxide out of the air for its 100-year life cycle. And here in the US, we connect that to an increasing business opportunity, which is that right now, the fast growing specialty segment of the tea industry is being driven by a wave of value-driven consumers who can't access sustainable tea because existing tea companies are buying corporate-grown tea through long, long chains of intermediaries. Okay, and then we transition to the solution. So I'll just maybe say, just to speed up what we're looking at here. Here's our solution. And you can see that we try and make it very clear by including the words solution and problem in the decks. Here's the market. This is something, I think there's a question previously about how to show your market. So it's the total market, it's the serviceable market, and it's the obtainable market that we're highlighting. We've got a slide on our target customer that we developed through actually doing interviews and understanding what the needs are for the people that will ultimately be the people buying our teas. We've done a competitive analysis. This is kind of a classic slide of you put your company up at the top and these different pillars that you're able to check all the boxes of, and you show how the competition is unable to do the same. Our go-to-market strategy for us is a mix of branded products as well as bulk tea, and then we also private label our teas for other people. Our momentum, I just scrubbed the numbers, but here's what it looks like to show what we've done in this year. I found 3 bullet points is usually a good number, so you've got something to talk about. Financials, so we just drop in a table that summarizes our profit and loss, showing increasing revenue year over year and clear pathway to profitability. Here's the team that's supporting the work, and talk a little bit about myself and then highlight how I'm lucky to work with such a diverse and experienced group of people. And then here's the actual ask. This is the amount of money we were raising. Here are the terms. And here's an important part, what you're going to do with the money and what milestones it's going to help you reach. And that's it. Here's my outro slide and the thanks to people. So that's the pitch deck.
All right.
And if you want, again, it's in the slides that'll get distributed, so you're welcome to take that and use it your own. It definitely was a process of figuring out what's the right order of the slides to tell the narrative. Like, do you put the go-to-market strategy before the team slide or after? And so I think that's something that can be catered, but you do want a lot of those elements in there for people to get the basics of what they're going to need to make any decisions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sandy, I see that you have your hand up, but I think we need to leave your questions for later so that we can go into the breakout session. And Raj, can you please walk us through the breakout session?
Yeah, sure. So storytelling, that's what pitching is, right? And the best way to start a good story is by establishing a connection between yourself and the problem that you're solving. And so this activity is around helping you flesh out how you're going to tell that story. So first, you'll independently think about a couple of guiding questions that will hopefully help unearth some of these things about why you're doing what you're doing. And then as a group, you'll talk about the process and what you learned from it, what was easy and what wasn't.